It's working.
Okay. Can you please check with the Rima if she can remember, unless if you do, which meetings did Minister Pan?
Hello. Mm. Okay, thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks for having me.
No problem, thank you.
Sure, yes.
I thought so.
Mm.
Mm. Uh,
It's a brief, then look at next 20 to 25 minutes.
you're going to leave.
Mm.
All right.
I'd like to finish that.
Mm.
Recording in progress.
Good morning. Are we about to start?
Good morning, honorable members. The chair will join us just in a minute. Thank you.
Honorable members, good morning, and I'm very, very sorry. My apologies for the slight delay. I'm in an unfamiliar territory here, so I was struggling with connectivity, but I'm okay now. We have the agenda for today. It's flighted on the screen. It's opening and welcome, adoption, apologies. Then we have a briefing by the Department on Political Developments influential to South Africa's foreign policy and outcomes of the 80th UNGA, focusing on two things, which are indicated there. We will have the DG and later Mr. Sahir. We will not have that 4.3. We will then proceed to 5, which is continuation of last week. And then under continuation of last week is remarks by Dr. Molloy, by Dr. Sean Beinefeld. We will then have a combined discussion on all the presentations. Can we have a mover for adoption of the agenda of today?
I move Honorable Wesley Douglas moves to adoption of the agenda.
Thank you, Honorable Douglas. Do we have a seconder?
I second. Good morning, Mr. Modula Stulo.
Murote.
Nzophiza hantle.
Ramasedi ke ena la itseng o ntse a re babaletse.
Re a leboga raitso. I second Honorable Wesley.
Go leboga nna ntate Moruti. Kgotse go aparela le lefatshe
Lo
lotlhe.
wena raitso.
Thank you very much, honorable members. As you know, last week, one of the things we dealt with was a matter of South Africans who are stuck somewhere in Ukraine. And I'm sure members have seen the developments. We had a brief briefing by the department last week. DG, you can, without going into detail, take the liberty of just indicating to the committee at some point in this meeting whether things are on track for assistance we are offering to those South Africans without giving details, whether things are on track or things are stuck or we are regressing. That context will be important. We want to welcome all our ambassadors and consulate generals who are here today to continue with this oversight which we started last week. As we know, the committee took a decision that we are going to do oversight based on regions. So we then bring the embassies based on regions, and then we do the oversight because we've got resource constraints, we've got time constraints, and we've got also human capital constraints. So that's the approach we have adopted. We have then agreed as a committee that some of the regions we will visit physically to confirm the reports that we are getting through the virtual oversight system. So without wasting time, I'm now going to ask Lubabalo to indicate if there are apologies.
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning to honorable members. Chairperson, the first apology is from the minister. He is in Mozambique on a state visit. And the second apology is from Deputy Minister Bottas, is partaking on a high-level seminar on peace and security in Algeria. And he'll also be going to Qatar on another visit. And Deputy Minister Moraga She's been booked off sick, Chairperson. Thank you. The department is led by the DG. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, DG. You are welcome. We have seen in the news the attitude that comes from President Trump in as far as commencing the handover processes, because South Africa is part of the troika of the G20. So the handover processes has to include South Africa being part of the Sherpa meetings, which are going to manage processes which will culminate into the G20 being held at his private residence in the United States of America. So we are with you, DG, and the department on these difficulties that you are definitely going to face, and the department is going to face, South Africa will face, the African continent and the entire globe. It's not unexpected. So I don't think anyone is surprised. I think the sooner we come to accept that not all that is rational and looks rational is actually rational to others, the better, so that we can be able to approach things in a particular way. So I'm now going to hand over to you, DG, to lay the foundation.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable members. Thank you. So, Honorable Chair, the first part of the discussion today is on a report on South Africa's participation on the 80th session of the UN General Assembly. My colleague Zahir Laher will take us through that. I'm not going to go into much of the details on that component of the presentation. Suffice to say that this year was particularly important for us to participate at a high level, given that the very foundations of multilateralism and the UN being at the center of the multilateral system is essentially being challenged and attacked by those who feel that multilateralism must be replaced by what is increasingly being called not just unilateralism, but a sense that might is the right approach. So when our participation at this particular session of the General Assembly underscored the importance of multilateralism, the importance of international law applicable to all without any favor or fear, and we looked at the UN Charter holding all of that together as key tools, not only for sustainable development, but also for peace and security. So South Africa's participation by the president and ministers and senior officials also to underscore the importance of multilateralism. And the presentation will unpack a bit more of that. The General Assembly then also takes place in a year where the international developments, particularly with a focus on multilateralism, has been of key importance. We had the Financing for Development conference that was hosted by Spain. We also had COP30 in Brazil, which just concluded. And of course, South Africa hosted the G20. The presidents of Spain, Brazil, and South Africa saw that multilateralism was under significant threat and felt it important enough for the three of them hosting these three important multilateral events to write an op-ed together to underscore the importance of these institutions and multilateralism to secure peace and security, to deal with the climate crisis, but also to deal with the challenges of development. What we've seen is that FFD was successful, but one major member state boycotted the Financing for Development conference in Sevilla, so the US did not participate and was not part of that consensus. COP30 did achieve an outcome under very, very difficult circumstances. Again, one member state was absent from that meeting, but still I think the challenges around finding binding commitments on the climate challenges, particularly dealing with the Financing for Development again, was a significant challenge, and Brazil did extremely well to get a consensus amongst those attending at COP30. As you've pointed out, Chair, South Africa just hosted the G20 summit, which was the last in a cycle of summits where the presidencies are from developing countries. And it was by all sort of commentaries a very successful summit, especially not just in terms of the manner in which it was managed, but also in the fact that in terms of substance, it reaffirmed multilateralism again, it secured commitments on debt relief, and it laid the basis for the G20 to take debt sustainability further in the future. We found that African issues were put squarely on the agenda, and hopefully this will be taken forward, most likely by UNECA, the UN, the IMF, the World Bank, and from the UK and South Korea in the context of the G20. But again, we hosted a multilateral event, the G20, without the participation of the US. So you can see there's been a pattern in non-participation by a major player in the international space in all of the major multilateral events taking place this year. As you've pointed out, from a continuity perspective, we have been informed by other Sherpas. We haven't been informed by the US directly, but informed by other Sherpas through the emails that they've been receiving, and they've shared with us that the indication is that the US will not want to invite South Africa to the Sherpa meeting. This will be discussed at the very first Sherpa meeting by the others, because this is a breach of G20 protocol. Guest countries get invited, and South Africa is a member of the G20, and our participation shouldn't be dependent on whether the presidency seeks to invite a member or not. So that will be a discussion going forward in the beginning stages of this G20 and taken up by other G20 members. So, Chair, I think that it's important to point out that our participation in the General Assembly is a space where heads of state meet, and lots of bilateral meetings takes place there, but my colleague Mr. Layer will point to those agreements. But what we've also seen in the G20 is that alongside the summit, in the many bilateral meetings we also had a mini summit with the European Union, where a clean trade and investment partnership with the EU was agreed upon. We also had a cooperation agreement on minerals and metals value chains with the EU. So we do see our partnerships with other major players in the global community strengthening, and this has been another outcome of this G20. And we can discuss a bit more about that in the question and answer sections. Chair, with that, I think let me hand over to Mr. Laher to do the substantive presentation on the UNGA 20, the 80th session of the General Assembly. Perhaps on the issues about our South Africans in the front lines, what I can say at this stage, as you can see, arrests are being affected because it is clear that this has been a trafficking of people and persons. And we are working to get our people from the front lines, working with our consular services. It's best to leave it at this stage because we're tracking movements and hopefully we can get them all out securely. Oh, thank you, Chair. With your permission, I can hand over to Mr. Laher.
Yes, no problem.
Thank you. Good morning, honorable members. Morning to the Chair and to the DG and the colleagues. Chair, I'll do the presentation based on the presentation that you see before you, the PowerPoint in front of you, but I won't go slide by slide. I'll give a broad overview, but you have the slides, which is a reference source for what I will impart. So as the DG indicated, the presentation will focus on South Africa's approach and priorities at the recently held 80th session of the UN General Assembly that took place in New York at the end of September. Now, just for the benefit of members, what I will say, and many of the members would be aware of this, is that the annual General Assembly is essentially, and to draw an analogy, it's almost like the beginning of the parliamentary year in the UN environment. Every September, the annual session of the UN begins, and there's a statements by the Secretary General, the President of the General Assembly, and heads of state and government, heads of delegations of all the member states, which outlines their priorities for the upcoming year. And it's a barometer of where countries stand and what their foreign policy priorities are. So it is perhaps the premier multilateral event or diplomatic event on the annual calendar. This year was the 80th session, being the 80th year of the United Nations. And the theme for this year that was chosen was Better Together, 80 Years and More for Peace, Development and Human Rights, which encompasses the 3 pillars of the United Nations. The President of the General Assembly this year is the former Foreign Minister of Germany, Ms. Annalena Baerbock, who basically presides over the session for the entire year until next September for the entire 80th session, and she had chosen this as the theme. South Africa's delegation was led, as the DG indicated, at a high level by the President, and he was supported by various ministers and senior officials. The reason why we have so many ministers participating is that besides the general debate, there are a series of high-level meetings, and I'll go into some of them, that take place during the course of the 5 days of the high-level week, in which all these ministers were involved in the various discussions. Now, this year, because being the 80th anniversary, there was a number of heads of state that participated. There were 83 heads of state. Other delegations were headed by their foreign ministers. And just to give you an overview, South Africa, as the DG indicated, used the opportunity to advance our focus on multilateralism and our commitment to advancing the interests of Africa and the global South. We had received more than 80 invitations for participation at presidential and ministerial level in conferences. And I just want to highlight, this is 80 invitations over 5 days. So there's a series of events and activities that take place during that week that various countries host, highlighting the various global issues. We had also received 30 requests each for bilateral meetings with the President and Minister Lamola, and other ministers would have received their own requests as well. That I just want to make a divergent point in that this is one of the values of what the General Assembly presents, or the general debate every year, because it is an opportunity for delegations to meet, and in this current global climate, where there is mistrust, where there are divisions among states, it presents an opportunity under one roof within the ambit of the United Nations for countries to come together and engage on various issues. So the bilateral meetings, if South Africa received 30, there are other countries that have also received so many, and there would be essentially hundreds of meetings taking place between member states to find, to build trust, to build bilateral relations, and to advance the global multilateral agenda. So a large component of the visit by principals was also dedicated to South Africa-US bilateral relations. So what was decided was that due to the fact that the President was going to be in New York during this week, he would use a large part of his time to also deal or address bilateral issues, particularly economic and trade relations with U.S. industry and U.S. companies. Since South Africa's participation and principal positions on critical matters of international relations are highly regarded, a decision was taken to attend and participate in most of the activities that we were invited for. Now, the key events that South Africa participated in during that week included, as I said, the general debate, which is the main event, which is the opening of the General Assembly and the statements by all member states outlining their approaches. There were also other high-level meetings, including a high-level international conference on the peaceful settlement on the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. This was hosted by President Macron of France, and the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia. This meeting was significant because it resulted in several more countries, particularly from the global north, that have now recognized the state of Palestine as a state. There was also a biennial summit for sustainable, inclusive, and resilient global economy, implementing the commitments on development financing, and specifically the financing of the SDGs, as we head into the final 5 years of the implementation period of the SDGs. You would recall, Chair and honorable members, that the SDGs was adopted in 2015 with a target date of 2030. So we're in the last stages of the implementation of the SDGs. There was a special high-level event on climate action, which is an annual event hosted by the Secretary General. There was a high-level event on Global Leaders Network on Women, Children, and Adolescents Health and African Malaria Alliance. This focused on global health issues. There was also a G20 Foreign Ministers meeting. This was the second ever Foreign Ministers meeting of the G20 held at the General Assembly. Brazil hosted the first ever last year, and South Africa followed that up. And there was a high-level segment in the beginning, which President Ramaphosa addressed. Now, going to President Ramaphosa's statement, because that outlines South Africa's foreign policy approaches, our focus area and priorities within the multilateral arena. I'll briefly touch on it, and we summarized the elements of which was covered in the President's statement that included a commitment to multilateralism, solidarity and cooperation, a focus on trade, highlighting the importance of climate change, highlighting the troubling erosion of respect for international law, particularly in the context of the undermining of UN Security Council resolutions, international agreements, conventions, unilateral military actions that are being embarked upon, etc. Another focus of the statement was on peace and security issues, particularly on what is going on in Gaza, but also highlighting the importance of upholding international law and maintaining peace and security in the DRC, Sudan, Western Sahara, and Ukraine. There was also an important focus in the President's statement, but also in many statements by member states, on building a stronger and effective UN, particularly in the context of the commemoration of the 80th anniversary, which became a moment of reflection on whether the organization is fit for purpose. The UN is facing severe constraints, partly because of the geopolitical realities, but largely because of the funding crisis it faces. The largest contributor to the UN budget, based on GDP, because the UN contributions are based on GDP, has cut down its contributions to the UN. This has resulted in a severe. It's had a severe impact on the manner in which the UN operates and its ability to carry out its mandate. So there was a focus by South Africa and many states on how do we ensure that the UN is more effective, but also representative, because the UN was created at a time when many countries were not independent and many developing countries remain out of the decision-making processes, including in the Security Council. The Secretary General of the UN has embarked on an initiative called the UN 80 Initiative, which is to ensure that the UN becomes more effective and streamlined in addressing the challenges it faces. And South Africa expressed its support for this initiative. The President concluded by challenging member states to rise to this moment with courage and unity, and reaffirmed that it's important for us to commit to the Charter principles that underpin the reason why we belong to the organization. Moving on to the other meetings that took place, as I said, there was the biennial summit for sustainable, resilient, and inclusive global economy. I had touched on that earlier, and I won't go into detail, but it did focus on issues like debt distress and relief, financing gaps, and as well as the need for greater inclusivity in global economic decision-making. I have already spoken about the two-state solution meeting and the importance of that particular engagement, and the result of many states recognizing Palestine, particularly from the global north. The G20 Foreign Ministers meeting, as I said, was the second ever hosted, and the President addressed the meeting, and the focus of South Africa's engagement was to highlight the thematic priorities for South Africa's presidency and the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainability, as well as focusing on the importance of collaboration, cooperation, and partnership to advance these priorities. President Ramaphosa had several bilateral meetings with member states. This included the heads of state and government of Ukraine, Sri Lanka, Finland, the president of the EU Commission, and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. In addition to what the president participated in and engaged on, the various ministers that were there participated in ministerial meetings, and from the DIRCO side, there was foreign ministers' meetings of BRICS, of IPSA, the India, Brazil, South Africa partnership. There was a foreign ministers' meeting of the Commonwealth, the Group of 77, etc. This allowed South Africa to reiterate its commitment to the multilateral forum to enhance its focus on international cooperation. In terms of how do we move forward, there were several outcomes adopted in all these engagements, and it is for DIRCO now to continue to implement the outcomes consistent with our approaches in terms of our advancement of our multilateral agenda and in terms of the overarching goals set out in the MDTP and the National Development Plan. Within DIRCO, it's the branch Global Governance and Continental Agenda that supports the permanent mission in New York, as well as our permanent missions in Vienna and Geneva, where other UN agencies are based, where we will advance and take forward the outcomes that were adopted. We will work, of course, with relevant line departments that also focus on the specific areas. As I reached the conclusion, I thought it's important that we should highlight the risks and what we are doing about mitigating some of the risks that we encountered as we engaged in the different processes. It's become clear, and this is becoming clear not just at the UN, but in various multilateral engagements, including at the G20 recently during our negotiations, that there are divergences of approach between countries, and these are often occasioned by changes in leadership, as well as a focus on unilateral action. And illustrative of some of the changes facing, or the challenges facing the UN in developing collective agreements, we see that there's a risk in addressing South Africa's domestic challenges of unemployment, inequality, and poverty, which we pursue through the advancement of global action, including in the achievement of the SDGs, which, as we've said many times before, resonate with our own National Development Plan. A challenge in implementing the SDGs is financing for the implementation. The DG mentioned the Sevilla meeting in Spain, which focused specifically on development financing. And it's become clear that the means of implementation is the biggest impediment to the achievement of the development goals. And again, we do face a backlash on referencing the SDGs or advancing the SDGs, as some countries are now backtracking on what we all agreed to. The SDGs was adopted by all member states in 2015, and now some member states are no longer committed to its implementation. And the SDG implementation essentially is about ending poverty. That's its primary focus. If you goal one of the Sustainable Development Goals is about ending poverty. And that, of course, is one of the biggest dangers of undermining the development goals. The risk, of course, from our perspective, may be mitigated by emphasizing development financing and the means of implementation, and focusing on that. We did see from in the G20, for example, in the outcome document, the global majority and the vast majority of states do want to have the implement, or do want to see success in the implementation of these development goals that we had adopted and the global agenda that we have focused on. That essentially, Chairperson and honorable members, is an overview of our participation. We are available to answer any questions, but we thought we'll give you a broad overview of what we did during our participation, but also what was the value derived from the General Assembly for South Africa, and also more generally for the United Nations to have this annual event, which allows member states to focus on strengthening the organization and multilateralism. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think that concludes that item on the agenda. If we can hand over back to you.
We wanted you to marshal your forces for all the remaining items so that I only come in when we are going to have a discussion.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chair and members, as you recall, we had in the last session dealing with the regional reports, two ambassadors were not with us. We have asked them to join us and give short presentations. It will be Ambassador Malloy, who will speak on some of the issues pertaining to Iran, and then also Ambassador Beineveld will speak to some of the issues from Palestine in particular. So if we can hand over to Ambassador Malloy. I'm not sure if he's on the platform. Ambassador Beineveld, are you with us?
Yes, good morning, DG, Chair of the Portfolio Committee and all on the platform. Yes, indeed, I'm connected. Do you want me to proceed, DG and Chair?
Yes, please.
Yes, no, thank you very much again, and good morning again. And my apologies for not having been able to join last week. I was airborne at that time, traveling to South Africa, so I could not join. The committee would have benefited from an extensive presentation that would have been imparted during the session. So mine is to be very limited and maybe to highlight one or 2 points by way of emphasis, as the presentation would have been rather extensive. So then quickly, I think that the economic reality with regards to Palestine in particular is one of an economy that is contracted. Given the current context, whether this is temporary downturn and so forth, I think that is an open question. But generally, I think the understanding is that what we have is deliberately engineered. It generates a context of dependency, a fragmented political and economic reality, and of course structural vulnerability issues. It is common cause that Palestine lacks sovereignty over land borders, over resources, critical levers with regards to governing the economy. I mean, trade borders, tax policy, natural resources, being able to manage movement of labor, movement of goods. These are critical levers with regards to matters economic, and of course outside of Palestinian hands. So the governance architecture is one that tends to generate underdevelopment, Palestinian underdevelopment, and this underdevelopment, gets structurally reproduced. You look at issues of fiscal dependency, it compounds the vulnerability. The presentation last week would have touched on clearance revenues, customs duties, VAT on imports, and these being collected by the Israeli authorities. And of course, you do have a regular feature of withholding of payments, transfers, and so on, the revenues, and also unilateral deductions. And of course, what this does is it generates challenges with regards to liquidity. So you're dealing with a reality more often than not of a constrained budget, challenges with regards to service delivery issues and so forth. So the Palestinian Authority severely challenged when it comes to meeting its responsibilities. But then I think a critical point is that despite all of these issues of structural pressures, you have exceptional economic and institutional resilience when it comes to Palestinians and Palestinian business in particular. So your chambers of commerce are active. Business, enterprise, a very active feature to Palestinian life and economic life in particular. SMEs, a very distinct feature to the landscape, economic landscape, and a demonstrated ability to adapt despite issues of severe constraints and shocks and so forth. You do have a very strong feature of social networks, and of course a major and maybe a foremost asset with regards to the Palestinian capacity is human resources that are just extremely robust, and it continues to remain robust. And so this resilience, is I think it's a major anchor with regards to systemic collapse and preventing systemic collapse. What is required is that the economic logic of occupation, this requires continued attention. You need Palestinian sovereignty. You need predictable fiscal flows and so forth. And of course, for that, it means two-state solution and continued support for two-state solution, and of course, translating this into an economic instrument. You need a just and a durable solution with regards to the Palestinian question if you are going to reach excellent heights of economic prosperity and so forth. Last week, part of the presentation would have included a fair amount of instruments that are currently being worked at.
Honorable Chair, I think we've lost Mr. Ambassador Beneveld.
Yes, it looks like that, yeah. But he was almost done, so we can go to
I was actually almost done, Chair. I don't know what happened there, but gee whiz, I don't know where
we can hear you now.
Okay.
You were at a point where you were talking about the support for the two-state solution.
Yes, no, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for that prompt. So the support for the two-state solution, I mean, this is the foremost priority, and then, of course, translating that support into an economic instrument. If Palestine is to reach,
but now, okay.
Effective levels of economic prosperity, you need a just and a durable solution. I would have indicated that with the presentation last week, there would have been a reflection with regards to all of the instruments currently under consideration. There also would have been a report with regards to an incoming visit, Minister of Foreign Affairs and expatriate state of Palestine. Unfortunately, that visit could not proceed any longer, but the idea was to launch the Joint Commission on Cooperation, and that would be the overarching instrument infrastructure in terms of all of the different sectors, and let's say line function, different streams and so forth with regards to cooperation. So hopefully we'll be able to conclude that sooner rather than later. But the point is really to get into that space of economic independence, economic prosperity that works for the people of Palestine. It's really about a just and a durable solution. I pause there, Chair. Thank you very much. I am very much aware of the fact that you would have received an extensive briefing already. So mine was just to maybe highlight by way of points of emphasis. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ambassador Beneveld. Chair, I do see Ambassador Malloy is online. I'm not sure if you've got network challenges. Ambassador Malloy, are you with us now? Can you hear us?
Sí, edite.
Well, if you can't hear you, DG, let's proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Those are the only two presentations outstanding. So that concludes the presentations, Chair.
Thank you very much, DG, and your team for the presentations here today that we extended from last week, this oversight mechanism by the Portfolio Committee. And thanks for the briefing on South Africans who are stuck in Ukraine, somewhere between Ukraine and Russia. That briefing is quite useful. I must say the minister also did give me some briefing on that matter, honorable members, a day before yesterday. And one of the things we have agreed to between myself and the minister, DG, is that 17 families or so, so that the department can give them an update on this particular matter. If DERCO is able to go down to KZN to meet them, I think it will be better, because some of them might have difficulties of resources to go to Pretoria. But that is up to yourselves, DG and the department to decide. But I think it will be very, very useful if the department can arrange quickly a meeting with those affected families, so that they don't rely on television and other news platforms. But thanks very much for the report and your reflections on the attitude towards South Africa by the US. I will just say to you that the struggle continues on that matter. Honorable members, we can now engage with the presentations from last week and today. Honorable Smith, morning. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to you, and good morning to fellow committee members and to the departments and the DG, and to obviously the honourable, the ambassadors who've joined us for the meeting. Chair, I think this discussion, I think we are, I think that we aren't aware of just how important this is, this discussion around multilateralism at the moment. And I think that the departments and the DG have diagnosed the problem quite well in terms of the difficulties in the international space that have arisen as a result of geopolitical shifts in other regions and other parts of the world. And I think that we have seen that there are new alliances being forged that we've seen through our G20 presidency. And even further afield in other multilateral organizations, and the way in which states are acting, either individually or with allies in to drive particular agendas. I think, diagnosing the problem is one thing. What I would like to hear from the department is how South Africa intends to navigate this increasing or this growing environment of distrust in the international space. We are a country that is committed to multilateralism. We in the Democratic Alliance are also great proponents of multilateralism. We think it's the best way, certainly as a non-aligned nation, for South Africa to navigate international waters. But how are we going to embark on our own foreign policy, and how are we going to uphold the national interest when we are dealing with international actors that we cannot trust? Or an increasingly unpredictable international world. I think the first sign of that is South Africa being disinvited from the first G20 meeting under the United States presidency. And I'd like to hear from the department and maybe from the DG how South Africa intends to respond to that as a first example. And I think we need to be preemptive of what is to come. If this is the first event at the start of this G20 presidency, I think that we can expect similar distrust from other international actors going forward. And even outside of the United States of America's influence, I think that we've seen that to a greater extent as well. So if the department could maybe just tell us how DIRCO and maybe the presidency more broadly intends to navigate this new international environment, I would appreciate that. And then on the United Nations General Assembly, it's quite fortunate and maybe opportune that we have this meeting today, because there is a vote taking place at the UN General Assembly today around whether Russia should return the children that it's illegally trafficked out of Ukraine at the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And it is an offense for which the International Criminal Court has sanctioned Russian President Vladimir Putin. And that vote is quite critical today in terms of where South Africa stands, not just as a mediator, but in terms of doing what's right and upholding our constitutional principles in this matter, certainly the Bill of Rights and the children's rights. Is the department able to give us an indication as to how South Africa intends to vote on this particular vote? Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Smith. Thank you very much for that. Honorable Douglas.
Hi, good day, Mr. Chair, and good day to all the members from DIRCO and all the members of Parliament and the people in South Africa. I think we have a lot to cover, Mr. Chair, and it's very unfortunate that I always seem to be chastised because I take long, because we have now got several missions that we have to get through. We have the whole of the Middle East that we have to get through, and we have the UNGA 80 report that we have to get through. So if you don't mind, I'm going to cover a few of the things. But from MK's point of view, from Nkonto Wesizwe's point of view, I think there's a couple of issues that obviously in the global geopolitical world is challenging us today, Mr. Chair. One of the key things is the handover of the G20. I want to follow up on some of the comments that you made, Mr. Chair, when you opened, and also made by DG Dango. And the reality is, Mr. Chair, that we've been treated with disrespect by America and by the West and by others. And I think that we handled it very well, that disrespect. But the reality is that multilateralism indeed is under threat, as Honorable Smith has said. And we as South Africa have to become in charge and the bastions of multilateralism for our own sake, for our own benefit. We see that things like AGOA, things like bilateral trade is being weaponized against us to harm us, to bring us harm in our economy, to bring us harm in terms of what our people think about who we are and what we do. So there is a lot of things happening, Mr. Chair, in the world where there are bullies on the worldwide world, the world thinking that they can bully their way into bringing about what they want at the expense of others. And Mr. Chair, multilateralism is a situation where we all work together and we say what's in the best interest of the people of the world. And what's in the best interest of the people of the world is peaceful negotiation, peaceful discussion around the economy, around resources, around water, around the things that matter to us as human beings, as energy, oil, those couple of things. Where we see the actions against Venezuela, and we condemn any unilateral targeting of any country, because the same thing that's been done to Venezuela could easily have been done to South Africa on the basis of the false claims that there's some white genocide happening in South Africa, which doesn't happen. There are more black South Africans dying every day, colored South Africans dying on the Cape Flats in the gang wars and because of drugs, than there are white farmers dying, Mr. Chair. And there's more black farmers dying by far than there are white farmers. So, the truth is that people are using media and other mechanisms to have their own narratives. and to be able to try and bully each other. And like we said, multilateralism is under attack. But when we look at the Middle East, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to get back to the past few presentations, again, we see there's a lot of targets that were set and a lot of activities that were based, but there weren't many outcomes-based results. Meetings, delegations, consultations are not measurable results that create jobs or markets for South Africans. We see in the Middle East understaffed missions, closed embassies, outdated IT systems, which is leading to the loss of tourism, loss of business, loss of economic diplomacy, and also the loss of cultural exchange, of understanding what's going on in that region and how we can be able to find each other in the new multilateral world that we live in. Mr. J, the state cannot maintain diplomatic presence in strategic capitals without an investment in our resources. We are talking about DIRCO, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation for the Republic of South Africa. It's a representation of who we are unto the world. It's a representation of our economic priorities. It's a representation of our friendship priorities, and it's a representation of what is right in the world, what we stand for in terms of justice. And that's what we need to look. A foreign service that is collapsing under austerity is a service that is going to go backwards. Our current budget is not enough to fix the problems that we have faced in the Middle East. We have vacancies of staff. We can't fill that vacancies because the vacancies have been frozen by Treasury because of austerity measures. So everything that happens in the budget of the GNU is impacting the realities of the ground within the Middle East and other parts of the world. We can't just be another tick box exercise as we have been over the last 30 years, Mr. Chair. If we look at the embassy in Oman, it was closed in 2021 due to austerity, and South Africa is now operating from Riyadh. A major diplomatic downgrade in a country that has become our second largest Middle East trading partner for 2023 to 2025. We look at Lebanon, we have no South African diplomatic presence at all, despite massive SA Lebanese investment networks valued in billions of dollars. We look at Cell C, MTN Group, the Aspen Group. We have businesses there, and then we have many Lebanese South Africans that have lived here. Many have fought for the liberation of our country. So we're not investing in cultural exchange. We're not investing in the businesses that have great markets for us. And we need to make markets available for our Black entrepreneurs, for our colored entrepreneurs, for our Khoisan entrepreneurs, for the Zulus, for the Xhosas, for the youth, for the women. We have 73% nearly of real world unemployment for youth. And we have all these markets waiting for our products, waiting for our meat, waiting for more of what South Africa has to offer in the Middle East. And we're just not getting there. Our antiquated IT systems and our broken consular infrastructure, it's creating backlogs in visa issuance. And this again stops us from getting more people from the Arab states who have oil money and have a desire to support South Africa for what we did in standing up for justice against the genocide against Palestinians through the ICJ case. But we can't create an environment to welcome those tourists if we can't even process their visas, if we can't even process the very basics of what helps them to get here and helps them to spend money here that creates jobs for our young people and our women and our children. The department cannot run foreign policy with a 1990s IT system while the rest of the world digitizes diplomacy. And this is something that we could have done a long time ago. It's not something that is new, Mr. Chair. And we are saying that we need to look at the structured bilateral mechanisms, and we need to make sure that those structural bilateral mechanisms actually work for us. The documents which we've been gotten, it lists the JCCs, the BPFs, the political consultations, the ministerial visits, joint task teams, but almost all the outcomes or MOUs not ratified, agreements unimplemented, and endless preparatory meetings. This includes unratified MOUs with Saudi Arabia after massive state visit commitments. And we don't know how that is translated into jobs, into work, and into business. There was the Iran JCC commitments, which was blocked by sanctions, unimplemented energy MOUs with the UAE, Oman agreements stuck in home affairs and transport processes. South Africa cannot afford diplomacy that generates documents but not development. So, Mr. Chair, I understand that international diplomacy takes time, but we have to, again, not have activities attended side meetings at the 80th UNGA meetings that we've heard. Yes, those meetings are great. We had 80 meetings. Again, what's the outcomes? We say there's outcomes. What is the outcomes in the ways that matter to the poor in South Africa? Not the elite, not the business people, not the people that can afford to fly there and be in those side meetings, the people that stood in the White House there next to our President Cyril Ramaphosa, people like John Rupert and all these different people that were there, even golf players. They were all there because they are the ones who own the land and own the minerals to this day. And they are fighting to keep a go because they're the ones that benefit from it. But do we as South Africans, the regional, indigenous, aboriginal people of this country, do we benefit from the land? Do we benefit from our minerals? Do we benefit from our oil? Do we benefit from our rare earth minerals? No. So all those bilaterals is to enrich the people who currently own things, not to enrich and deliver the poor from the poverty which we find ourselves in because of apartheid and the lack of caring from the ANC and from the GNU government. Mr. G, on there is a lot of great power contestation in the Middle East right now, and there's a big focus on it, especially because of the genocide, and there's huge energy security issues. We need to make sure that we have a multipolar focus and help those that are in need. As MKP, we've been committed from the start to the two-state solution. We need sovereignty for Palestine. It must exist as a state, and the plan for peace shouldn't just be a ceasefire. It must be a plan that establishes, surely forever, a two-state solution where Israel has the right to exist and to safety and security, and Palestine has the right to exist and to safety and security, and both have a right to prosperity. And we need to make sure that we as South Africa play a role in being the parents in that situation, in being the parents and the people who bring peace, because we are a people of Ubuntu. So, Mr. Chair, why is DIRCO closing or downscaling missions in Oman, Lebanon, and others at the exact moment South Africa needs deeper economic diplomacy? What is DIRCO's plan to modernize IT systems, digital visa platforms, and consular services, and what budget is required for it? Why are mission residences, chancellery buildings, and staff housing in such poor conditions? And what portion of the 7 billion rand foreign service budget is allocated to maintenance? How many posts in the Middle East are vacant, frozen, or filled by acting personnel, and when will this be addressed? And what needs to happen for those vacancies to be filled, Mr. Chair? So then on the SPMs and MOUs, are the dozens of MOUs listed, how many are ratified, legally operational, and producing measurable outcomes? Why are key MOUs with Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Oman still awaiting ratification years after signing, and even though there's been sideline meetings all the time? And what mechanisms are ensured that line departments actually implement SPM commitments? Because that's where the tacky meets the tongue. Then, Mr. Chair, also, we want to see how many South African companies, especially black-colored, Khoi and San, and Indian-owned, have been assisted by these SPMs to enter Middle Eastern markets. Because what we've heard is that a fantastic opportunity lies ahead for us, but it looks like it's a fantastic opportunity, economic opportunity, only for those who have the land, only for those who have the top 100 JSE listed companies, and they are not black-colored and they are not poor. So, Mr. Chair, we need to find a way to bring about an equitable change and a diplomatic mission that is redefined by the need to deliver our people from poverty through economic diplomacy globally. So, Mr. Chair, I think we have a lot to do, and we have a long way to go. South Africa must not be a passive participant in Middle Eastern geopolitics. We are a BRICS plus nation, a Pan-African leader, and a country with moral authority rooted in liberation. So our diplomacy must deliver jobs, markets, investments, and justice, not just meetings, MOUs, and maintenance backlogs. Mr. Chair, just on the UN G80, again, the document acknowledges the global financing crisis and warns about the failure of the global north to meet development financing commitments. But what is South Africa's strategy to move beyond begging and asking for money? How are we going to go away from IMF, World Bank, and austerity conditionalities? When are we going to start looking at using our resources, backing our resources to back our own currency and to work with the global multilateral world and with BRICS Plus to be able to fund our own currencies, to be able to trade in our own money, to be able to set our own people free from poverty? So lastly, Mr. Chair, we need concrete diplomatic consequences for states aiding and abetting genocide, and we need to support the apartheid bill that we've been working on, Mr. Chair. And then we want to make sure that when it comes to DIRCO 18 meetings at UNGA, when and how are we going to find out what was discussed and how is it going to be communicated to us as members? Because this is the challenge that we had with G20 also. We were invited to the social compact, great, we were there, we love our people, so we were there with our people. But it still doesn't give us any oversight capacity as a commitment to say what was discussed, what was signed, what was in the bilaterals, what was actually given to the people of South Africa for what we had, for what we did. Mr. Chair, we need to see peace in a place like Ukraine. The war must stop. We must stop that war because people are dying needlessly. And people are dying needlessly because there are outside players from NATO and other places that are feeding this crisis. We need peace, Mr. Chair, and South Africa should play a leading role in that. The president met the head of state of Ukraine during the 80 UNGA. Was South Africa pressured to shift its non-aligned stance, and what safeguards are in place to prevent Western weaponization of diplomacy? And the document confirms that this meeting happened. So what is the process and the need for that meeting, and how does that then relate to meetings with President Putin and bringing about peace? Is this a peace negotiation or is this a realignment? Because we are meant to be non-aligned, Mr. Chair. And then what is South Africa's detailed strategy for securing an African veto power at the UN Security Council? Not just representation, because right now we're fighting for representation, but what we need is an African veto. Africa has the largest population by 2050. We have the largest amount of resources. We have the largest amount of youth by 2050. We should have a veto, Mr. J. We should have a veto, and we have to have a seat on the Security Council. So I want to know what is being done to press for that. And then how will DIRCO ensure that development financing for SDGs does not simply become a new debt traps for South Africa? Because I think that that's also a red flag for me. Like we have seen with CBAM and other mechanisms that we have to pay for other people's consciences and things that they have done. We need to make sure, Mr. Chair, that we need to look after ourselves. But anyway, Mr. Chair, I'm going to leave it there. I'd like to find out more about how we're going to go forward as an African continent to make sure that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement allows us to trade better with the Middle East, because we have so much opportunity in the Middle East, but we're not seizing it, Mr. Chair. And there's no way for young people from Soweto, from Mitchells Plain, from Ravensmead, from other places, colored people, Khoisan people, Zulu people, there's no way for them to get their products from South Africa into Oman, into Lebanon, into the Middle East, Mr. Chair. And that is something that we got to address very, very quickly. Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Douglas. Honorable Mhlongo.
Thank you, Chair. Present greetings to yourself, to other honorable members, to the ambassadors and the DIRCO team led by the DG and all South Africans. Chair, let's first and foremost start by really congratulating South Africa for having successfully hosted G20. And we must really say we're taking the side and we stand with the president in these trying times by refusing to hand over the presidency to some junior staff, because we were undermined as a country when the US wanted to send us some junior staff from their embassy office to come and sit next to the president of the republic breaking all diplomatic protocols. So we must really appreciate that finally the president has located his backbone on this matter. And we must really, Chair, say that we must not be bullied by the US. They are not doing us a favor by saying that they will deny us an invitation. I see that there's G20 meetings that are starting in the US this year, the Shepherds. And the US must understand that South Africa, we're not done a favor by being invited. We're also a founding member of the G20, and we're a sovereign state that ought to be respected. We are not going to have our domestic policies being determined by the US or any of their friends. We're not going to be told by the US who to be friends with and who to not be friends with. We'll do South African things the way we see fit for our people who voted us as parliamentarians. So we're not going to be told by them. They can continue to push their propaganda on white genocide that does not exist in South Africa, but we must never, ever, we must encourage President Ramaphosa to never be a coward and never back down from this. But he must know that we're coming to the US. South Africa must go. They were part of the Troika. We must go. Unless it declares war and then it denies our delegation visas, then that's something else. But and thinking that he will not give us an invitation, we don't need an invitation. We're part of the Troika of G20, so we don't need this invitation. The only thing we need is the visa. Unless they deny us those visas, then that's another fight we'll have to engage on. Now, Chair, let us also, Chair, plead with DERCO to really prioritize the matter of our brothers who were misled to find themselves caught up in the war between Ukraine and Russia. Really, they must be rescued, because those are South Africans who were sadly misled by some people who, some of them were members of this parliament and members of the very same committee we're sitting on today, Chair. And it really leaves little to be desired when members of society, ordinary citizens, can be misled by members of parliament into leaving South Africa, leaving the comfort of their home to go and find themselves caught up in wars that have nothing to do with them. Really, DERCO, we are pleading with you. We are also pleading with the minister. The minister must intervene. The president must intervene. Those people need to come back home, must be brought back home, must be brought safely before something terrible happens to those people. They don't deserve what happens to them. There is no South African who deserves to be misled. If you will recall, this year there were a lot of scams where South Africans were scammed and taken to different parts of the world just to be scammed into whether it's a job or to be human trafficked or to be made sex slaves. So we cannot allow this to continue under our watch and to allow it to continue. And there's also members of parliament who were, or former members of parliament at this point, who were involved in this scamming of our people. Really, it must, DERCO, please, we are pleading with you, urgently intervene, bring those people home. They are South Africans. They deserve to be brought back home and really to give us their side of the story and tell us and shed more light into this. We hope they were not sent there to join any groups or to fight maybe on the side of Ukraine fighting against our friends Russia. So please, DERCO and the minister, Chair, really we must ask the minister. I will propose, Chair, that we must write to the minister as a committee and ask the minister that they must urgently intervene and keep us updated as a committee, even time to time. As soon as there's an update, they must keep us updated on this matter of our people who are stuck there that must be brought back home. So, Chair, I'm proposing, I hope somebody will second that proposal, that we must write a letter to the minister and ask the DERCO to intervene, and even ask the presidency to really intervene on this matter to see our people brought back home. Now, Chair, you know, our presence in the Middle East, Chair, I'm interested in knowing how much has our presence in the Middle East generated, one, investments for our country, if it can be quantified, that the presence of South Africa in the Middle East has generated this total amount of direct investment. Number two, how many jobs have we created for our people with our presence in the Middle East? If it can also be broken down by countries, it will really, really be important for us to see, are we doing well? Are we not doing well? Where there's opportunities? Because I saw when they were making presentations with regards to the country of Jordan, it was said that there's an opportunity for our meat to be on the market. Our meat used to be on the market in Jordan, But as it stands on the shelves of Jordan, we no longer are able to put our meat because of some certain requirements that I felt like it was some administrative issues that can quickly or easily be resolved. Let's resolve those issues and make sure that our products are back in the shelves of Jordan. And really we are able to quantify with each country. Let's say how much have we generated in direct investment from Qatar, from Saudi Arabia, from all the different countries. Let's quantify it. Let's put a quantity so that we know that, okay, in this country in the Middle East, we're doing well, but in this part of Middle East, we're not doing well. And we speak to our ambassadors to ensure that they too go and explore the market and find opportunities that can be pursued by South Africans to enter the market of that country where they're deployed to. So let's, next report when we go to the other regions, or also even this region of Middle East, if these reports can be updated to reflect on that, how much have we generated on investment and how many jobs have we created in these investments? And also the companies that are benefiting from this, how many companies are there and how many of those companies are black owned to represent the demographics of this country? How many of these companies are owned by women? How many of these companies are owned by young people? How many of these companies are owned by these people from the disabled community, so that we are able to really say that our presence in the Middle East truly represents the demographics of South Africa in every sense of the word. It cannot be that the same companies that used to benefit during the apartheid era are the same companies that continue to benefit even now. We need to ensure that black businesses owned by young people, businesses owned by women, businesses owned by disabled people get access to these markets. We find a way of also collaborating with small business department chair in order for us to present these opportunities to small businesses, businesses in the rural areas, businesses that are owned by our people, to be able to access these markets, to be able to have information on how to access these markets. So I think that will be important for me, if we can be given that breakdown, if this report can be updated at a later stage and it's represented to us. It doesn't have to be the full delegation again, it can just be the DG presenting to us with the inclusion of this item I'm asking for. And my other issue of concern, Chair, is that in Israel, when we recalled our diplomats, did we close our embassy office? Is it closed? If it's not closed, why? And if it's still in operation, how much are we spending as a country in running the operation of that office when we have agreed in the Sixth Parliament that we must cut all diplomatic ties with Israel? I know you will raise, Chair, that the president is still looking at the matter. It's been close to 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, Chair, with that resolution being passed by Parliament. But to this day, there's still no feedback from president. The president is still looking at the matter. I'm not sure if the problem is he's looking for legal advice, and perhaps in his office he's got problems. There's no legal advisor. I'm not sure what could be the problem. What is making this resolution to be stuck in the office of the president? Another question I have for Terko, Chair, I hope that DG will be able to answer. There was a council resolution in Johannesburg to rename Sentin Tribe into Leila Kali Tribe. And then we learned through the spokesperson of the presidency that the presidency has referred this matter to DERCO, that DERCO is sent to engage with the city of Johannesburg on this resolution. I want to know from the DG, is this a norm that when cities are renaming streets, DERCO gets to be involved and engage cities and perhaps try to influence them not to rename their streets? If it's a norm, where else have they done it? Can you give us examples that we've done it in the city of Cape Town, we've done it in the city of Mbombela, we've done it in the city of Polokwane? Where else have they done it, and what was the resolution? And what is the current status of this matter? How far has DERCO gone with this matter? And what is it that they are really hoping to achieve with interfering in this matter of renaming a street, just one street in the city of Johannesburg? What is it that DERCO is hoping to achieve with this matter? If we can be told what is it that they are hoping to achieve, and what are they hoping to talk the city out of renaming the street? Really, I was really confused when the president had a media briefing on this matter, and they explained that now DERCO is getting involved. I was lost. Why would DERCO be involved? And the MOUs, the Memorandum of Understandings that are signed by ministers, Chair. Previously we've asked, I don't think we've ever gotten a clear answer. Can we just be given an answer, a straightforward answer, like we're just children, like we're 5-year-olds? Are these Memorandum of Understanding, are we allowed to get them as a committee and review them and check what kind of agreements are they signing, or are they strictly confidential that we will not be able to have access to them as this portfolio committee? It's only ministers who only have access to those documentation. And if we're allowed to have access to this documentation of memorandums of understanding that are signed by different ministers, can we also get them and we peruse them as attachments? You don't have to present all of them, DG. They can just be attachments when you do presentation on the different regions, that these are the memorandum of understanding we have signed with this specific country. There are 10, and this is their titles, and you attach them, and it will be up to us as members to go and read them and peruse them. And if we've got questions, we'll then raise the questions, because we understand it can be a tedious exercise to try to go through all the memorandum of understanding in a committee. Leave it to us, just attach them as part of the attachments, attach them as reports, give it to us on time, and then we'll then engage if there's any engagement. And Chair, lastly, I would like to say that our bilateral relations with Palestine, we must support any and all forms of support that the Palestinian embassy in Pretoria requests. If to run the embassy of Palestine in Pretoria requires that, as DERCO, we must allocate a budget to ensure that there's enough funds to continue to run that embassy in Pretoria, we are in full support as the Economic Freedom Fighters, Chair. We want to support that, and we are saying it to you now. We will support that proposal. We are supporting it fully. That office must continue to run. The state of Palestine must be an independent state. They too deserve freedom in our lifetime. You will recall that Nelson Mandela used to say, our freedom as South Africans is incomplete without the freedom of the people of Palestine. So in true solidarity style, Chair, we must really support any and all forms of support that the Palestinian embassy requests. Even if it's financial support, we must be able to give it, Chair. You can rest assured, you can count on the support of the EFF to give the people, the embassy of Palestine, any and all forms of support that is required by them. And last, Chair, I know I said that was my last point. The issue of G20 and South Africa not being invited, Chair. We can't have members of the GNU, like the Democratic Alliance, today trying to act innocent. The Democratic Alliance, Chair, went to the US, lobbied for sanctions on South Africa. They lobbied, they went to the US, knocking door to door with their brothers, the AfriForum and Solidarity, those racist movements, to go and plead with Donald Trump to impose sanctions on South Africa. What did they think was going to happen? Now that chickens have come home to roost, then the DA wants to act as if they are concerned we are not invited to those things. There's animosity between South Africa and the US. It's the involvement of DA in matters that have nothing to do with it. We need members, Chair, of GNU to understand that issues of international relations are only dealt with by the Office of the President and the Office of the Minister of International Relations. They lost that debate. Well, they could have argued when we were establishing the GNU and perhaps asked to be ministers of international relations as the DA if they wanted to interfere in that manner. Now they've interfered, there's repercussions, the DA is screaming the loudest. They are not mentioning that they are happy. They should have said to us, we are happy as the Democratic Alliance because we have achieved our mission. South Africa seeks to be isolated. So we must not take lightly, Chair, to these people who continue to use the name of South Africa to advance their nefarious agendas on international platform, including at some time there was the use of the South African flag by the president of Umkhonto weSizwe, Jacob Zuma, when he went to Morocco to pledge solidarity in Morocco on behalf of South Africa. It is not welcome, Chair. It's not welcome. There's a stance of South Africa. The stance of South Africa is that we support the people of Western Sahara and we are against the occupation of Western Sahara by Morocco, and we're calling it an illegal occupation by Morocco. And there's no South African who's got the right to say that and put the flag of a national symbol of South Africa and say they are supporting Morocco, not on our behalf. They should have gone there with the banner of MKP to say as MKP, so that it's clear that it's not South Africa. And we're not happy with the people who keep going to Israel to pledge solidarity and support to Israel, as if it's and using the flags of South Africa, as if it's the stance of the South African government, when there's a clear stance of the South African government that what the genocidal Israel is doing in Palestine, it is a genocide, and we've taken them to the ICJ. So we must call out these people who think they've got some authority who are super and superior maybe to the country, to the president, to the even parliament, to go and pledge solidarity on behalf of South Africa in these countries that South Africa has a clear stance on our relation or lack of relation with them, Chair. So I'll leave it there, Chair. Please, when they answer questions, can they just ask what we answer, direct questions, and not give us a long story? Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Honorable Mhlongo. Honorable Mwela. Or before then, it looks like there's a point of order from Honorable Smith. Or is it an earlier hand, Honorable Smith?
It's a new hand, Chair, just to respectfully refute the comments that were made by Honorable Mhlongo. I'm not sure if you woke up wanting to bring conspiracy theories to the committee, but I just wanted to have that on the record that we refute whatever she has said. Thank you.
All right. Honorable Mwela.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members of Parliament, DG Dango, our ambassadors, our excellencies who are flying our South African flag abroad, ensuring that there is peace and stability where they are. Let me, Chair, start by also extending my gratitude to DERCO for the successful G20 hosting, and also to the Republic of South Africa, most particularly presidency, at the manner at which they handled matters with regard to G20. We can see there's an effort to reverse or to underlook the impact that South Africa has done through G20 and the achievements that they've made through the propaganda and the misconception of media that is being pursued by the Western imperialists, most particularly the US, to ensure that they peddle lies and they push the issue of the South Africa to say that there is a persecution of white Afrikaners in South Africa, which the world have seen, Honorable Chair, when they were here for G20, the most remarkable G20 that has ever happened. They have witnessed G20 across other countries, but all of them, they are saying that what they have seen in South Africa was the first of its own, where South Africa has brought all African countries together to come and witness and to be part of this historic event that we have hosted. We want to thank the update also by DG with regard to the matters which involve our South Africans which are trapped in the Russia and Ukraine. We welcome the update with open heart, and we were saying we're happy with the manner at which the matter is handled with agency so that our people can come back home safe and sound. Those who are responsible for this, there must be consequences for that particular matter. We also want to welcome the presentations which were made on the previous sitting and up to today with regard to the political developments through South Africa's foreign policy and the outcomes of the 80th UN General Assembly. We note South Africa continue to pursue our foreign policy commitment of pursuing multilateral platforms across our globe to commit to economic development and peace and stability. We note that there are continued challenges in the Middle East where we are placed, and we are also checking on the significant challenges which our ambassadors and our excellencies are facing at that particular part. But we are saying let them continue to fly our African flag high, despite the conflicts and political instability and deep economic crisis that are faced in most of this part of the globe. We continue to see more positive outcomes in terms of economic development that are coming through our consulates, through our ambassadors and our embassies. We also want to welcome most of the inputs that were made, most particularly constructive inputs which are aimed to build South Africa, to show South Africa growing in a global world, so that we continue to become one of the growing African countries which are developing at an upper speed. This particular challenges that we are facing across Africa, the ongoing coup that we see every day that is happening, we see South Africa playing a very critical role in this particular role to ensure that we silence the gun across our African countries. And we want to say to DIRCO that they must continue to do the good work that they are doing. We see the humanitarian crisis that are continuing to pursue in the Middle East. These are the most creating ongoing humanitarian needs, and we want to say that we welcome the work that they are doing. But I want to check clarity in terms of how many issues are ongoing in our embassies across Middle East. I'm saying so, Chair, because when we're having our sessions, with the ambassadors which are in the European Union, AU, there were many challenges which were raised on that particular part, which are delaying our progress, most particularly with regard to our foreign diplomatic policy, to ensure that there is efficiency in the work that they are doing. So I want to check in terms of the issues which were raised, most particularly most of our attaches, which are based in those missions, they were raising the challenges that there is a non-responses in terms of some of the ministries when there are opportunities which are coming from those host countries. When they reach out to our ministries or DIRCO on other avenues that can assist in alleviating the terrible challenges that we are facing in our country, there is no response in that particular matter. They've mentioned the practical issues in terms of the learnerships or the scholarships opportunities that are there. When they respond back to can be other through arts and culture or through agriculture or many other avenues, there is no response. I want to check if in the Middle East, do we have such challenges that our ambassadors, our excellencies are facing at the time when they seek this particular clarity from home? Is the responses enough that they are able to get the assistance that they need? In terms of the ICT modernization, do we have any challenges that we are facing in these embassies that are there in the Middle East? Are they able to execute their duties with efficiency without any challenges that they are facing from DIRCO? I think most of the issues have been touched. And also to check, Chair, in terms of the staffing, are they able to get all the attaché, starting from trade, agriculture, in their organogram to be able to execute their mandate that have been given to them as South Africa to execute in those host countries. Is there any challenges with regard to understaffing or the vacancy which are not filled? What are their challenges that can make them not to execute their duties for the betterment of building South Africans' diplomatic policy in those particular countries? I think most of the issues, Chair and honorable members, have been touched. Let's continue to execute our responsibilities despite the challenges that we're facing and the attacks that we're facing. We need to make our South Africans, that we need to be strong at this time and not allow any bullying from any superpower or any country that deem themselves as such. We need to make sure that our people become conscious and ever ready to face whatever economic challenges that we have to come together and fight. For us, Chair, to be treated as partners in this diplomatic arena, rather than just a charity case. It's high time that we must show now that we can be on our own and develop our own economy without having to become beggars of people who don't respect us, who does not respect our diplomacy and our economic diplomacy of such. So let's continue to fly South African flag. That is my submission, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Honorable Mwela. Honorable Andisiwe Kumbaca.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to yourself, Chair, and honorable members and team from DERCO, DG, and ambassadors present, and fellow South Africans. Chair, I think Honorable Mwela has covered a myriad of things. I was going to input in the session, Chair, but let me just input on the UNGA presentation, since I've been covered fully by my colleague. I think in terms of UNGA, I think to maximize the benefits of these global, engagements that we have across, I think I'm proposing, Chair, that we have a framework to align our domestic departments with the commitments made at the UNGA 80, especially on financing for development and youth empowerment. So I think we need to find ways, or a framework like we've been saying previously, that ensures that all our international work and engagements translate into tangible gains that we can see here at home. And then also, I think the President's bilateral engagements with Ukraine and Finland and Sri Lanka and the EU present economic and strategic opportunities. So I just want to check if David could just outline the next steps to ensure that these engagements materialize into practical programs, investment flows, or development cooperation. And then also, Chair, I think given South Africa's rising profile as a leader of the Global South, I think it's important that we communicate these achievements, effectively to the public, so that one can see the work we are doing, internationally, that will, in essence, affect them, especially those on the ground. And I also think, I believe that as Parliament, we must just play an active oversight role. So in that being said, I think we must receive quarterly updates on the implementation of the UNGA 80 outcomes as this portfolio committee. And then finally, Chair, I think we should also ensure that the UNGA 80 outcomes feed directly into advancing, the AU's Agenda 2063. So I think in South Africa, we must anchor all our engagements and feed them into our continental priorities, Chair. And lastly, let me just also join my colleagues in congratulating the department in the department and in having a successful G20. Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Kumbaka, and honorable members for the issues you have raised. I hope all of us have had an opportunity to speak. I did get a letter, honorable members, from, I must just get the actual name here. But in the meantime, as you know, honorable members, there's an exit of one member from our committee, Honorable Duduzile Zuma, who exited the committee last week. I did send her a message on your behalf to thank her for having served in the committee. In the same breath, I got a letter from Nkosazana Zuma Ncube last week asking for an urgent meeting, a meeting which I agreed to, and that meeting then took place in Johannesburg on Monday. She came with the other three sisters, and they confirmed the following things. One, that they have opened a case against the former member of this committee, former member Honorable Duduzile Zuma. Two, they confirmed that she, according to them, is alleged to be involved in the arrangements of the South Africans who find themselves now in a difficult situation between Ukraine and Russia. Three, they confirmed that included in the number that went to this situation between Russia and Ukraine is other two people who are Botswana citizens and are known to the former honorable member of this committee, Honorable Duduzile Zuma, and that the parents of these kids from Botswana are in distress, and the ones in South Africa also in distress. They did confirm that they have also written to both the President of the Republic, President Ramaphosa, the Speaker of Parliament, Honorable Tokodidiza, and the Minister of DERCO, Minister Lamola, that they also wrote to me. They confirmed that they will be very happy as families that are affected, together with the other 16 families, if DERCO can hold a meeting with them so that they can get a comprehensive briefing on the efforts being undertaken by government to try and rescue these South Africans who are stuck in that part of the world. They did express satisfaction to the effect that the South African law enforcement authorities have taken up to the matter and they are acting on this particular matter. And they requested that the matter should not be politicized because, according to them,
these were just innocent South Africans who were led by somebody who is in the family and they trusted. And as a result, they believed in what the honorable member of the committee was communicating to them. There is a concern which came from them regarding the fact that the two Botswana citizens who are said to be part of the group, it has not been heard from them for several days, because almost on a daily basis they've been checking on each other. So they are very much worried about that. So it's our hope, DG, that South Africa is also working with Botswana on this matter. They confirmed in the meeting that there are other Africans who seem to be part of the groups that are there in that particular area, that it's not only South Africa and Botswana, which means there is some work which is being done by these missionaries in the African continent to do this recruitment, which is illegal. They are also glad that they wrote to the committee, and the committee did not waste time and held a meeting with them through the chairperson, that meeting, and that if there's a follow-up, anytime they will be available to again get into another meeting to get a follow-up. I did say to them that we got a briefing from the minister last week on this particular matter, and we have been assured by the department that everything possible legally within the relationship we have with both Ukraine and Russia is being done to make sure that these South Africans who are that side of the world do come back home. So I thought I needed to just update the members on this particular matter. I did get a feedback on my message when I was thanking our honorable member Duduzile Zuma. She did reply, honorable members, that she's thankful for having served in the committee and that she will see us in the near future. So that was the message from our former honorable member of the committee. There hasn't been communication from her party as to whether there will be a replacement in the committee, but we do have Honorable Douglas, as we all know, who is representing MKP here in the committee. I also spoke to former Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma because of her being the mother to the ones who wrote to me, just to confirm that as a mother, she's aware of what the children have written to me as the chair, and she did confirm that yes, she's aware, and as a mother, she's thankful of what the committee, working with the department, are trying to do to intervene in this particular situation. Of course, as a leader and as a mother also, she's also quite concerned about the situation, and that the family will be very happy if the children can return home safely. Yes, I thought I needed to do that, DG, before I give over to you. DG.
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, I think there's a few of the questions I'll try and sort of deal with, and hopefully I can answer some of them to the satisfaction. Because some of the issues with MOUs, I'm going to ask my colleagues to also come in. I think with Honourable Smith was the first, and there were some themes that he raised that were followed by others. But in terms of the issue of multilateralism and how we will navigate this difficult space, what we found useful, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, over the last few years is that given the fluctuating politics and how that impacts on multilateralism, with elections and also coups, and different approaches being taken to issues of global governance, what has helped us to steer a path is sticking to international law and the mandates we get from the international legal frameworks that we are part of, but also our constitution does help us. That helps us to navigate what can almost be very nebulous approaches in the global arena, but sticking to international law that is implemented fairly is one that has held us in good stead. And we're working with a number of other countries around the world, particularly from those that are calling themselves middle powers, where we don't have the armies or the economies to use coercive measures to get our way in the global arena. We use the institutions of global governance. So that has really been very useful for us, and we've seen that it's also been made us a very reliable partner in the international arena for many, whether it's in Europe, Latin America, the Middle East, Africa, who actually respect the fact that we and many others are taking this stance. There was a set of questions then around the G20 and how do we respond to the US. We got emails yesterday from other Sherpas who indicated that following our last Sherpa meeting, which was the Sunday, where there was no invitation to any meetings in the US at that point, that they did get emails, and that in that email, the US Sherpa team was indicating that they are bound by the president's instruction on social media. So the link in the letter is to the social media post about South Africa's non-participation. And therefore, they did not, send us the normal details that you would send members for this meeting. But we were informed by others and were very unhappy about the fact that the protocols of the G20 are being breached. And they will raise it bilaterally, as we will do now that we have the letter. We will engage with the US bilaterally. As members have pointed out, the presidency of any G20 at any given stage has discretion to invite invited countries. So, for example, we invited Ireland and Spain is almost a permanent guest. So, but the presidency still has the discretion to invite guests, but not members. Members are, by virtue of being members, have a right to participate equally. And you'll see that within the G20, the outcome document, both from India and ours, there's reference to reminding all of us that all members have the right to participate freely in all meetings of the G20. So we will raise this. I do foresee that it's going to cause some issues within the G20 for at least in the first Sherpa meeting and beyond that, because I do think that members will be taking up whether, if you have members not invited, does this mean that what you're convening is in fact a G20 meeting, or you're convening a meeting of G20 countries, but not necessarily under the banner of the G20. So it's going to be a very difficult space for us to navigate. But we've done what we have to do. We will engage bilaterally. It's the US that is actually in this instance breaching the protocols of the G20, which other members of the G20 are also not happy with. I think there was a question about the resolution today. We take every resolution on its merits, and we are guided again by international law and our own constitution. So while we are still negotiating on some issues in that resolution, we will be guided by our obligations under international law. And it's an important issue because South Africa has been quite centrally involved in some of the projects that were seen as confidence building, and the return of children is one of those. So we will definitely be guided by our obligations under both international and domestic law in that resolution. I think the Honorable Douglas also raised many issues on the multilateralism track, which I think none of us can really agree with. But I think the issue that he raised, which is so important, is that, again, it underscores why we depend on international law and the institutions of global governance. We are not happy with all of it, but we need it. And we will work to reform it with the Security Council of the WTO. But what is happening at the moment is that the current breaches of international law takes away the predictability, whether it's on trade rules or the use of force. So the current instability, for example, with unlawful use of force in the Americas as well as in the Middle East, is something that all of us collectively in the international community are concerned about and should take action against, because if we allow for these kind of breaches to happen without any form of countermeasures or sanctions, then impunity will reign. So again, I think the way that we are doing this is to ensure that we work with all member states of the United Nations, all members in the UN, all the plurilateral institutions that we're engaged in, to ensure that we re-emphasize the fact that what we need is the kind of predictability and certainty that comes with working within the frameworks of institutions of global governance. There's a whole set of questions from the Middle East. I'm going to ask the ambassadors to answer those. Just suffice to say, there's a couple of questions on capacity. Capacity is something that, as Honorable Douglas pointed out, we do not have the resources we need, whether it is for, increasing our diplomatic footprint. In fact, we've had to decrease our diplomatic footprint. Nor do we have the resources to ensure that where we do have a diplomatic footprint, that we have then all the necessary capacities. So we've had to work we had to work internally to look at how do we ensure that with the little resources we have, that we can, staff the offices to the extent that we can still meet our obligations. It puts a lot of pressure on the head of missions and head of staff, but it's something that is not only an issue for us in the Middle East, but it's across the board. And I'll just say very briefly, there's definitely a link between our diplomatic footprint and our capacities to be able to engage with both our political mandates and our economic mandates. And where we do have the capacity, there's almost always a linear link to better outcomes in both the political outcomes and the economic outcomes. So we do appreciate the fact that Honorable Douglas and others are pointing to the fact that we do require more resources to deal with the capacity issues that we do have. I think the Middle East specific questions, I think given the fact that we have the ambassadors here, let them answer that. But suffice to say that on the capacity issues, it runs across. So it's if they could rather focus on some of the operational and economic diplomacy issues that they think is important to share with the committee. Yeah, I'm just going quickly through the issues that I thought I should touch on quickly. Honorable Douglas also spoke in terms of the reformation and the change agenda around global governance, and that includes, for example, the Security Council. We work working very closely with all member states to ensure that we have text-based negotiations around Security Council reform, so that we have a voice for Africa. And particularly, we do see ourselves as a player in that space, but we have a voice for Africa that can actually, redress the imbalances on representativity in the Security Council in particular. The issue of the veto is one that is also being discussed. There's one stream that believes that no country should have the veto. Given the fact that it undermines the will of the majority. But there's also a stream that believes that you enlarge the Security Council and all members of the Security Council should either have the ability to have a veto right or not. But so the veto issue is really complicated. And I'll ask maybe my colleague Zahir Lahir if he wants to embellish a bit more on that. I think you dealt with the issues of trafficking very well. So I just want to, and that came from the questions from Honorable Mhlongo. There was a specific question on the office in Tel Aviv. I'll ask Ambassador Benefeld to just briefly touch on that, and maybe somebody from the desk as well was with us. On the Leila Khalid Drive issue, we have engaged with the city, but our view is the reason why that became an issue was in the trade negotiations between the US and South Africa. They made that a very specific request that South Africa reconsiders that. We inform them that it's not a national competence, the naming of streets, but we can engage with the city around the concerns raised by the US. But we are not going to be demanding that the city changes the kind of decisions that they make, and that's the level of engagement with the city. And it's not a usual practice. I think it's a very unique issue that came out of a very unique situation where a domestic municipal decision was elevated into a geopolitical issue. On the MOUs, many of the colleagues asked on MOUs and contracts. So some of the MOUs that have been signed are available, and we'll share that with the members in due course. Some of them are already available online. The contracts that the different departments have signed, so if they binding contracts, some of them have to come through Parliament, but most of them are not that type of contracts. It's not legally binding to the extent where it has to come to Parliament. These we will also try and share with members. We have the same challenge in that we facilitate the discussions through the mechanisms that we have, but what we haven't been able to do is to look at the follow-through. So we're working with the presidency, who's taking a leading role in this, to ensure that the coordination and follow-up and monitoring of the implementation of the contracts is done better. So perhaps we can have a session with the members when we have the tool that is being designed to do this, and we can share that with members. I think the last issue that was raised, because I think the questions from Honorable Mwele covered, and Kumbacha covered some of the same issues that was raised by other members, and I'll go over to the ambassadors. Perhaps just on the issue that you raised there, just to re-emphasize what you had said in your meetings with the families, Honorable Chair, is that both our ambassadors and diplomatic staff in Ukraine and in Russia are looking at how we can safely repatriate these 17 South Africans that were, in essence, taken under false pretenses, which is essentially trafficking. We know that, for example, that the port of entry was Moscow, where they were met by soldiers in uniform and then taken into the front lines in Donetsk. And we're trying to get them back from there. And, I don't want to go deeper into the details of this because we're having to to wait for windows of information, but we are working with our consular services and both the Russians and the Ukrainians to ensure that the safekeeping and the safe passage is provided for essentially victims of trafficking in this instance, because they're under false information. Can I ask firstly, maybe start with Zahir. Zahir, there's a couple of issues, Mr. Laher, on the global governance space, both on the General Assembly, but also some of the issues around multilateralism that perhaps you want to amplify. And then the ambassadors who can then, I think the ambassadors in the Middle East who are with us, if they can just talk more about the links between the political work and the economic opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, DG. If I may, Chair, just very briefly, because I think the DG covered many of the issues that were raised. I will just add
just
on
before
one.
you go far.
Thank you.
Sorry, DG, maybe I may have not paid attention. What was the response to the matter raised by Honorable Smith on the voting today?
We've got the resolution, and it's a resolution that's being engaged with. It's a resolution essentially that deals with children that have been taken from Ukraine to Russia. And it's essentially a resolution that seeks to, within the framework of international law and the UN Charter, to get them back. What we are going to do is we're working still with a couple of delegations, both in New York and here, because the vote is in the afternoon. So we will, what we said, Honorable Chair, is guided by our own obligations in terms of the international law. We will look to what extent the resolution aligns with our responsibilities under international law and domestic law with regards to children. And then we will, based on the negotiations that are still taking place, we make a decision in the next couple of hours. So I can't give a definitive answer here.
Okay. No, thanks for that. Okay. Over to you, DG. You can marshal your forces on responses.
Thank you. DG, should I continue? I'll be very brief.
Yes, proceed, Zahir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair. I wanted to add on one thing that the DG touched on, and that is on the issue of reform and the issue of the veto. South Africa is guided by the African Common Position, which is known as the Ezulwini Consensus. It was adopted in Ezulwini, in Eswatini, in 2005. And I wanted to just reference something in Ezulwini that speaks about the veto. And in this regard, it is clear what the African Union had agreed upon was that Africa is opposed in principle to the veto. That's the principal position of the African Union in the African Common Position. However, we've also maintained that as long as the veto exists, and as a matter of common justice, it should be made available to all permanent members of the Security Council. So that's the guideline in which we approach the issue of the veto in negotiations. That ideally the veto should be done away with, but as long as it exists, if the council was to be reformed and there were to be new permanent members, the new permanent members should be given the same rights and privileges as existing permanent members. As the DG indicated, we do advance the issue of reform, not just of the Security Council, but of the UN as a whole, within the context of the negotiations that are taking place within the General Assembly, to ensure that the UN remains credible, representative, etc. Security Council reform is specifically advanced in the General Assembly through a process called the Intergovernmental Negotiations on Reform, and South Africa actively participates in this process. On the other issues pertaining to multilateralism and generally on the UN, I think the DG covered that sufficiently. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lair. Honorable Chair, if I may, through you, if I can ask for Ambassador Lally and the team that's with her to respond specifically to some of the figures on trade and investment. I'm not with them. They're in the boardroom at the moment, so they can organize themselves in the way they want to do it. I suppose the Ambassador Lali will make some opening remarks and then perhaps give over to a team just to speak on the specific trade and investment issues from the region that has been raised in question. Ambassador Lali.
Thank you very, very much, DG, to the Honorable Chair and honorable members. Thank you once again for giving us the opportunity to conclude the work we started last week. Some of the questions are of a general nature, but what we would like to provide would be specifics in terms of the figures that we have at hand in response to the very specific questions around FDI flows, trade, and ODA opportunities. For that, I will hand over to Madame Nelia Barnard, the Acting Chief Director responsible for the Middle East. Madame Barnard.
Thank you, Ambassador, and good morning to the chairperson, the honourable members, and the Director General, and of course the excellencies and colleagues. Just in terms of starting with investment, we work very closely with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. They provide us with the aggregate data through what we call trade profiles, which they regularly update for us. I just quickly took down some of the key partners' data. With the Saudi Arabia investment, the latest figure we had was investment of $1.6 billion and 563 jobs were created. With Jordan, we had 35.2 million investment with 28 jobs being created. With the UAE, it was $23 billion with 5,525 jobs created. With Qatar, it was $19.3 million with 50 jobs created. I may also just mention that South Africa in its own right is also an investor to many of these countries. Just quick examples, in Saudi Arabia, we have invested $227 million and created 632 jobs. In the UAE, we have invested 501 million and created 2,380 jobs, notably through the Netcare. In Qatar, with Sasol, we've invested 6.9 billion and created 2,837 jobs. In Oman, we have invested over 200 million and we have 34 jobs creation. But I may also invite excellencies who may have data for other countries to also kindly share that. But we will also provide the summary table as the honourable member requested. And then in terms of our trade figures, we have also a table which we will share for both the 2024 trade figures with SARS. The total balance for South Africa is with trade for the whole Middle East region is a negative one of 126 billion. We have exported 69 billion and we've imported 195 billion. We also have trade figures for the first 9 months, January to September, which does show some positive developments where notably the deficit has come down so far to about just 100 billion from 126. And we've also seen that for the first time, our largest trade partner in the region is the UAE, and we're currently registering a positive trade balance for now of 8 billion, away from the previous negative from 5 billion. But we will provide all these figures as were requested. Thank you.
I also just want to indicate, as the Director General said, we have a website where the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor has a treaty database, which will show all the agreements or memoranda of understanding on which the structured bilateral mechanisms are based. We will also download those agreements and provide them as requested.
I'm wondering, if I may, DG and Honourable Chair, whether we should knock on to a response regarding the costs related to our presence in Tel Aviv now, or perhaps wait for the Excellencies who may wish to provide additional responses in respect of the item we are on now, on trade and investment figures. May I kindly seek your guidance?
I think if you can conclude with the trade and investment issues, and then we can come back to that.
Thank you, DG. Well, from an HQ perspective, we've had our say. If the Excellencies that are on the platform have a deeper dive to provide to the honourable members, they are more than welcome to take the floor.
Well, maybe let me start DG through you as well as the
I think go ahead, Ambassador Mugabe.
Yes, Muhammad Kamarat from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Yeah. Well, just to, because we as the mission in Riyadh, we are responsible for almost 4 countries, which you have highlighted last week when we were making a presentation. In that presentation, we have highlighted opportunities from both ends. Opportunities that we have identified in the host countries in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, in Oman, as well as the Bahrain, but also some challenges that we have highlighted in terms of the current conflict in the Yemen, in terms of our trade and issues that are necessarily able to flow as we were expecting them. But generally, DG, we were confined to the template on the structural bilateral mechanisms. I'm sure when we were talking about the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we have highlighted the opportunities in terms of the Saudi opening for the world, in terms of the Vision 2030. That has invited countries, including South Africa, to seize such opportunities, which we have highlighted them in terms of the current booming for constructions, as they also prepare for Expo 2030, but also preparing for a vision, FIFA 2034, to hold the FIFA 24, as they are confined to the construction of stadium, that we have made invitations to through the Saudis themselves, through the South African several companies that are involved in the construction industry, to seek such particular opportunities. We have also made highlight, DG through you, in terms of how we can expand our trade largely, considering that we have highlighted that almost 80% of what we consume in these countries, particularly the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Gulf in particular, is imported from various countries, including those that South Africa export to the market in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I'm sure we have also highlighted opportunities in terms of both the poultry as well as the red meat basket. In terms of I'm sure we have highlighted that opportunity that were unlocked through President Ramaphosa's visit to the region, in particular in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in 2018, as well as in 2022, when the ban on the red meat from South Africa for almost over 70 to 20 years was lifted. And that has also created opportunity for South Africa's companies to seize that particular opportunity.
But of course, like both our colleagues at head office have highlighted, DG, through the acting chief director, as well as Ambassador Lali, our acting DG, we continue to make a special call to expand, as the honorable members of the portfolio committee have highlighted, in terms of bringing new players in the space, in terms of what South Africa becomes South Africa's national interest. Particularly as we will continue to work with all the three spheres, both in terms of municipalities in the country, as well as the provincial government up to national government, calling on those spheres to continue to support the missions so that we're able to realize our objectives, our strategic objectives, particularly with regard to some of the compliance issues in terms of, I'm sure you are aware that this is a halal region in terms of what we are treating with them. We've also highlighted opportunities in terms of the mining. I'm sure we have said almost South Africa has over 150 years of mining experience. And with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia having identified almost over 2.5 trillion of worth of mineral deposit, we said it's an opportunity for South Africa to collaborate, South African companies to collaborate with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to seize such particular opportunities. But of course, in overall, DG, you have made a special call to members of the portfolio committee to support us in other initiatives like you have highlighted with regard to the visa exemptions in both diplomatic passport holders as well as ordinary passport holders. Because those are enablers in terms of what we drive into South Africa in terms of tourism arrivals. We have always been emphasizing that when you look at the region in terms of the numbers, you may think that they are small, but they are big spenders in the South Africa's economy. And those are very critical in terms of the support that we can receive from members of the portfolio committee to fast track some of these particular issues. We also highlighted that I'm sure this region in particular is one of the countries that are with sovereign wealth fund. Those that are some of the areas that we focus on, and through the support of honorable members of parliament, of the portfolio committee in particular, are areas that we can leverage on as we engage in terms of foreign direct investment into South Africa's economy. And thank you very much, DG, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ambassador Mugabe. I see, Honorable Chair, we've got two ambassadors who'd like to take the floor. So through you, I'll give the floor to first Ambassador Asmal and then Ambassador Mokoena afterwards.
Thank you very much, DG, and morning, honorable members, chairs, and colleagues in the region. I thought I'd just give a few indicators on some of the problems we face and how we operate to overcome those problems. Let me begin by saying that economic diplomacy is at the cornerstone of our relationships with countries in the Gulf. However, DIRCO does not act alone in this, and it has partnerships and dynamic relationships with other departments in doing so. For example, with regard to the meat issue, the constraints to our export of meat to the region is primarily due to foot and mouth disease outbreaks that periodically occur in South Africa. We have worked with the Department of Agriculture to overcome this and have proposed to the parties in the Middle East on creating quarantine zones where meat could be, where the cattle could be kept, treated, and ensured that they are free of foot and mouth disease before they are sent to the region. With regard to investments, the region has investments both from the private sector and the public sector in the form of sovereign funds. However, all of the countries in the region insist on having a agreement on the protection of investments. Our view initially had been that our local legislations and the protection that our legal system provides is sufficient. However, that has not been sufficient, so we are working with our colleagues in the TTIC to explore agreements with regard to that. Chair, the imbalance of trade between the Middle East and South Africa is primarily because of the import of petroleum products petroleum products. Let me also say, Chair, that with regard to tourism, I think we're in an advantageous position that when it is the excruciating summer in South Africa, in the Middle East, it's winter in South Africa, so we can address, we can attract tourism from that region. However, the promotion of tourism in this region has been less than satisfactory. Our missions have reached out to provincial governments for tourism material and national government, but that hasn't been forthcoming. The promotional material has to be culturally sensitive as well as in Arabic. The argument made by tour operators and so on is that numbers from this region are very low. But as Ambassador Mugabe has also indicated, the numbers may be low from this region, but they are high-paying visitors. Another constraint with regard to tourism is with regard to visa restrictions. We are engaging Department of Home Affairs to engage with this issue. While Qatari nationals do not require, or Gulf nationals do not require visas to South Africa, expatriates from the subcontinent who usually hold senior positions and are travelers as well as have a lot of disposable income are required to have visas. Also, when the royal family does visit, they come with large contingents of foreign workers that also require visas. So we are we are engaging Department of Home Affairs to resolve that issue. Finally, for business, we go out of our way to promote small businesses, but I think much has to be done to inculcate the international entrepreneurial spirit among our manufacturers and business in South Africa. We find it extremely frustrating that trade inquiries are not responded to by the private sector, despite several attempts to do so. This, in conclusion, this to exploit the economic potential of in the region is a collaborative effort between DIRCO, partner departments, and the private sector. We constantly try to achieve that and pursue that strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Mokoena.
Good morning, DG, Chairperson, and members and colleagues. Thank you so much. I wanted to really speak to the question raised by, or a comment made by one of the honorable members, Ngobile Mhlongo of EFF, regarding the issues pertaining to importation of our meat into the Jordan and the Iraqi market. And I want to preface my my comment by saying that, meat is a very critical and important commodity to the Middle East. And if our meat has got issues, then we are in great trouble, because our farmers suffer, and so do the importers of meat in the Middle East. One has seen this firsthand, hence the dynamic contact, Chairperson, that we have established between ourselves as a mission, the Jordan Ministry of Agriculture, as well as our Department of Agriculture, to try to get to the bottom of this scourge of FMD, which Ambassador Asmal has already alluded to. So the fact that the meat is not on the shelves of Jordanian supermarkets is not so much because Jordan prevents the meat from coming. It is really the issue that was raised by Minister Steenhuisen in his press release of 26 November this year, that FMD has permeated even some of those areas where it used not to be.
In fact, he categorized it as the country has never seen this in decades. So it has actually affected our exports in a very big way, hence the engagements that we are having almost on a daily basis with our Department of Agriculture to try and understand how far we are with issues of vaccination and so forth. I must indicate that Jordan is very responsive. They have developed a protocol to try and see how best they can assist South Africa to get our meat back onto the shelves. South Africa is also working very hard to assist the Jordanians to get the meat on the shelves. The protocol will be signed as soon as Jordan has responded to some of the queries that were received from South Africa regarding some of the inoculations that they require before they can accept the meat back. But this is a matter that only occurred in the last 2-3 months. Normally, our meat does not have any problems entering the Jordanian market. So, Chairperson, that's the meat story. But apart from just trying to get the meat into the Jordanian market, as I indicated in my presentation last week, is that the mission is working very robustly with the Department of Trade and Industry, as well as the Department of Agriculture, to try and get 61 more products onto the Jordanian shelves. At the moment, you don't quite have much of South African, especially food products except vegetables and fruit. So we're trying to get processed food and others. And as soon as we succeed, of course, we will have good news, because for every product that hits these markets in the Middle East, we are creating more and more jobs. Chairperson, I also mentioned that the projects on the pipeline, one within the ICT space where they'll be manufacturing at the Gauteng IDZ. At least it is at proposal stage. There is a potential sponsor who has indicated interest. So others are really at the conception stage, so I can't really get too much into them, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel. We will create jobs as soon as these projects mature. Other than that, Chairperson, I don't know if there's anything else I can indicate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador Mokoena. So, Chair, with your permission, if I can go back to Ambassador Ali just to deal very briefly with the issue of the mission in Tel Aviv.
Thank you very, very much, DG. And maybe just before I go to the specifics on Tel Aviv, to wrap this session up, I would just like to indicate that there is indeed vibrant interaction between South Africa and the region. As we speak today, there is a trade delegation from Oman, which is currently interacting with the Department of Trade and Industry with a view to concluding an MOU. And they have also been invited to the President's Investment Conference next year. And we look forward to diversifying and deepening trade relations. Just last month, we supported Minister Dao on a week-long visit to the UAE, where the DTIC did a really, really deep dive into how we can deepen and diversify the trade and investment basket with that country, because stats show that the UAE is the second after the US in terms of the amount of FDI that goes to it. So when one engages with the UAE, it is not just the resources of the UAE that one is dealing with, but all that concentrated money from the rest of the world that is there. So we are also hoping good things will come out of that one. And my last one would be an appeal to the members of this honorable committee to perhaps consider engaging with your counterparts on the portfolio committee responsible for Home Affairs and assisting us and the other departments involved on the economic front with persuading Home Affairs to really pay attention to the visa regime, because that is the golden key that will unlock the resources that we require to power ourselves forward. If we can implement a visa regime that takes care of whatever concerns we have, but also makes it not only possible but easy for the people of this region to travel, it will go a very, very long way. And on this one, if I may quote what the president said to ministers he was on the state visit with in China in September last year, there are not millions of people from these countries who want to come and flood South Africa and never go home. And in respect of the Middle East, I think that could not be truer, because they would come, visit, invest, and go back home. So for us to treat applicants from the region as though we need to close off our ports and put up Fortress South Africa, I think is an own goal. Having said that, back to Tel Aviv, I would like to say that we have not closed the mission in Tel Aviv. So we do have a presence in Tel Aviv. What we don't have is a physical office, and that really is a function of budgets on our side, and also the ability to conduct some of the work remotely. But I will hand over to Madame Mpho Ndimande, who is the Deputy Director responsible day-to-day for that file, to give you some of the details of costs associated with our current presence in Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you, Ambassador. Good morning, Chairperson, honorable members, DG, and excellencies. I will provide a breakdown, of course, for the mission in Tel Aviv. Prior to the ending of the contract for the rental of the chancery, the total cost per quarter for the rental together with levies was 467,000. Currently, there are 5 locally recruited personnel that are receiving monthly salaries, and the breakdown of the staff is the accounts clerk, consular clerk, admin officer, a driver, and a political secretary. Currently, the amount being paid or the cost being incurred per month is 396,948. I thank you.
Thank you very much, DG. With that, we hand over back to you.
Thank you, colleagues. Just to underscore the fact that what we have done is withdrawn all our diplomats. What we could not do in the absence of a decision to fully close is close all the presence there. And that's why the question has been answered in the way that it has. Thank you, Chair. I think that covers the questions. If we can hand over to you.
DG, if I could just make a brief comment with your permission.
Thank you, Ambassador Beneveld.
Yes, maybe just to alert to the fact that, of course, we have separate and distinct diplomatic tracks when it comes to the embassy Tel Aviv. Of course, as Mpho would have said, the Chancery lease agreement would not have been renewed, but we still have the official residence, and it's a property that we own, and that does require attention from time to time. And then, of course, the South African Representative Office in Ramallah. So you are dealing with 2 separate and distinct diplomatic tracks. Of course, in our case, accredited to the Palestinian Authority. And then in the other case, it's the state of Israel. But I think we ought to be reminding ourselves of is the fact of military occupation and the realities that it would produce. So one is not always able to all too neatly in practice, completely avoid the issue of operational coordination. This is now the representative office Ramallah, and then also the embassy as we would have had it in Tel Aviv. Israel controls borders, the issues of security, issues of access, and this means that the South African representative office in Ramallah finds itself functioning within the same constraints and processes that govern the South African embassy in Tel Aviv. So what you do have is a situation of structural dependency when you actually look at the operational environment. If I head to Ramallah, I need a visa from the Israeli authorities. I do not get it from the Palestinian Authority. So I thought I just wanted to highlight that point of structural dependency and then the kind of constraints that it would deliver in terms of processes and how we interact. We are not able as Ramallah to separate all too neatly from the Tel Aviv presence. So I just needed to emphasize that point. Thank you, DG.
Thank you, Ambassador Beneveld. Chair, I think we've done our side, and I'm going to hand over back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG. Thank you very much for those responses, Honorable Mhlongo.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my hand is up. Chair, I wanted to do a follow-up. These staff members of that we have there in Tel Aviv, the driver drives who to where? Like really, we are paying salaries of close to 400,000. That's 396,948 rand. We are short of just 3,052 rand for spending 400,000 monthly to pay salaries. Like, I'm interested, the driver drives who to go where and all this stuff. And I want to know if DERCO has had any communication from the presidency in terms of perhaps, or have they initiated talks with the president in closing this office and explaining that our presence there with the resolution of the 6th Parliament that we must cut all diplomatic ties is really not necessary anymore, or they've just been quiet and just simply waiting for the president to initiate talks, or have they tried to maybe advise the president that this is what we can do in order to close the diplomatic office? I'm really interested in that. And lastly, Chair, the issue of the nominee, the ambassador nominee from the US, I'm interested, will this guy, Leo or Prozel, be given credence? Will his credentials be accepted in South Africa, considering the fact that he was in the forefront in opposing the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa during our apartheid struggle? Will we allow a racist like Leo Prozel to enter and have credence in South Africa and represent and come to our soil to use the South African soil to undermine us? Are we considering to look at the previous comments he has made on social media, comments he has made recently as this year, 2025, comments he's making in relation to the propaganda against South Africa, that there is a genocide in South Africa, and taking them into consideration that really this is not a desirable person that can be accepted into South Africa? Thank you, Chair.
DG?
Thank you, Chair. On the diplomatic relations with Israel, we've now done another document which we will be hopefully presenting to Cabinet, and the Cabinet cycle is done. The document essentially outlines what our legal responsibilities are, especially in terms of international law and being a third-party state, and it deals with what should our, in the fact is that Israel has breached all the known international legal norms, and what that would mean for our relationships going forward. So we are engaging with the presidency. We've just given another briefing document this week. Hopefully we can then engage with the entire executive quite soon, because it has to be the entire executive apparently that has to be party to this. But you know, we just to suffice to say, I can't go into the details. We are engaging with the presidency on this. On the Agrima for Mr. Bozell, we are waiting for, I think I've just seen the latest is that there's another Senate meeting taking place. And once they request, we will have to weigh in all of the factors about his past, his stance, and engage with that in the context of us also having to send an ambassador to the US, and the issue of reciprocity always kicks in. So we have to balance these issues out. So we'll have to just look at what is going to be the better strategy for us to go forward. But let us, you know, the Senate process is apparently not complete yet. I think the Congress process now has been complete, but the Senate process must still be completed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, DG, and we understand the sensitivities of the matter, that you can't give all the details here because the matter is still being dealt with. I think that is understood. Honorable Douglas?
Honorable Chair, thank you. There's just one more matter that was raised recently with us directly. There's a matter that was raised by Mr. Lebogang Stephen Lentswane. And he reached out to us to say that he's one of the victims from South Africa stuck in Myanmar at the Immigration Police Center there. And they were pleading for help because there's the 1st of December, there's going to be elections, and the military there, they say they won't be able to provide them a place to stay or safety. And because it will be used as a voting station. I'm not sure of all the details, but there's about 10 South Africans that are asking for repatriation, and they're asking for safe transport and back to South Africa. I just want to ask Dirko if they are aware of the situation, if they've been approached about the situation, and if there is anything that we can maybe take this matter forward with. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm sure Dirko will take note of that matter, and if other information can be sent to Dirko or Honorable Douglas, then they can deal with it. Is there any comment from Dirko, DG? Any other thing?
Thank you, Chair. As you guided, if we can get the details, our colleagues will then be able to take this up from consular services as soon as possible. Mr. Monyela is on the platform, so if we can get the details, we can definitely take it forward. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Mr. Monyela is one of the mini machines of DERCO, so he's on the platform. Is that fine, Honorable Douglas?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you so much, DG, and thank you very much, Chair. We'll take the matter forward offline. Thank you.
Okay, Honorable members, I want to suggest that we work with DERCO to try and arrange a meeting, virtual meeting, with our counterparts in the US. I think the time has come for us to engage openly with our counterparts that side. And if it's agreed to in this meeting here, then we can have DERCO assisting us to arrange that meeting so that we don't only leave this matters of our relationship with the US and how we feel about it. We don't only leave it to DERCO and the presidency, but our counterparts in the US must know where we stand as members of parliament responsible for matters of international relations. If I can just get indication from members, Honorable Smith, will that be okay? Honorable Douglas?
Mr. Chair, that's fine. From a diplomatic point of view, we need to engage everybody. We are a non-aligned movement, so we agree we need to engage everybody. Thank you.
Sure, Honorable Mhlongo.
Yes, Chair. Let us engage and ensure that we engage our proper counterparts who probably serve in the same committee with us, and ensure that just like our parliament here in South Africa represents the different views of the people of the US, you will appreciate the fact that there's many members of parliament or the Senate and the colleges in the US who've got different views in terms of this matter and the engagement with South Africa. So let us not get only a delegate that will be pushing a certain narrative that is biased. Let's get the different views as represented in the US Parliament. Thank you.
Yes, from our side, it will be the entire committee. Honorable Muela.
Thank you, Chair and honorable members. Is agreed to, Chair. Let's proceed. Let's have bilateral interactions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Muela. Honorable Kumbacha. Okay, so it's agreed to. One of the things which we must indicate outrightly, DG, as you work with us, is this matter of South Africa embarking on an onslaught of genocide on white Afrikaner farmers here. So it will be one of the central matters we are going to take up with our US counterparts, including this G20 thing. From my side, the last thing that I can just raise as a proposal to you to consider with the department, it's opportunities which, in my view, are arising from the posture adopted by the US. And one of those opportunities is embedded in the fact that we are part of the Troika for the G20. And my view is that in whatever we deal with, for instance, these meetings of the shepherds and the issues that we raise from time to time, we must at all material times discuss with the UK as the next chair. So that within the tripartite of the US, South Africa and the UK, we have the UK fully briefed and that we are on the same wavelength with them. The other advantage that will arise from that is that at a time when the UK takes over in 2027, they will feel an obligation, obligated to perform better than the US and demonstrate to all and sundry that they are not an appendage of the ideas of the US. They are a distinct sovereign state which is going to approach the matter differently and bring it back to where it's supposed to be in terms of how you run this multilateral body of the G20. The third advantage, in my view, is that bringing the UK on our side as part of the Troika will inevitably impose a responsibility on the EU to work together with us and the UK. Because the EU, I think, will feel that as a collective, they want to demonstrate to all and sundry that they are not part of what is part of the West is pursuing, which is propagated by the United States of America. So for the South Africa and African continent, for me, if we adopt that dual tactical approach and not focus our energies too much on the brouhaha coming from a man of the private residence, the trumpeting trumpets from the United States of America. For me, we must invest our energy elsewhere, but continue to raise these matters of principle in as far as the conduct of the US is concerned, so that we win over rational minds in geopolitics to our perspective. And I think those rational minds will do that. The state actors and non-state actors will be on our side, and the US will gradually then isolate itself in a very multifaceted way. So I think from my side, DG, there shouldn't be frustrations and anxiety. We should actually be celebrating this conduct of the trumpeting trumpets from the US, because it gives South Africa some leverage advantage in geopolitics. That's just my suggestion to the department. I want to thank you, DG, for marshalling your forces today on behalf of DERCO to come and account here to the portfolio committee. And as always, ourselves and yourselves, we have adopted a non-antagonistic approach, but we are fundamentalists as a committee when it comes to adhering to matters of principle on oversight. And we are very happy that ourselves and yourselves has continued to live up to the expectation of demonstrating to the rest of the world and South Africans that we really take our work serious, and our processes are not childish, they are objective, they are matured, and we assume that our own weaknesses so that we can become better executioners of oversight on the executive. Your robustness, honorable members, in engaging today here in the meeting, our ambassadors, all the missions that were on the platform since last week until today, the work that you are doing today in your missions, you are continuing the work which was started by the first delegation, which went to Britain to submit a petition on behalf of the South African people around 1913, 1914, immediately after 1910, when the Union of South Africa was formed. There was a delegation that went to present a memorandum on behalf of our people on the extent to which South Africans were not happy about the Union of South Africa, which was arrived at between the British and the Afrikaners stroke Dutch, which today is represented by that house, but that building in Pretoria called Union Building. It's a living monument of the decisions that were taken in the Treaty of Vereeniging. So we just understand as ambassadors that you are carrying, you are on that mission, and you carry that responsibility in that context. The fact that President Oliver Tambo went all over the world from one country to another to propagate where we stand as South Africa, and today we enjoy this democracy. Just know that that which you are doing through the missions, you are taking forward that struggle. It's just that it has taken another form because the conditions are different. We are now working legally within the means of the United Nations and all its ancillary bodies. You are frustrated by the constraints of the resources in those offices. As you get frustrated and the offices get dilapidated like in Netherlands, never despair, never lose hope. You are far from your families. You get communication that they get sick, and there are some other dynamics which you can't share with us because they are confidential amongst you as family members. But you continue to stay, the struggle continues. So on behalf of South Africa, you are pursuing and hoisting that flag of South Africa. So you must continue to do that work. It's very, very important to work with the support that you are getting from DERCO in Pretoria. Let's continue to do that, and future generations will be bequeathed with this qualitative work that you are doing for South Africa to succeed. So continue doing that work, our fellow combatants. Otherwise, thank you very much, South Africans who have been following the proceedings here in the committee here today. And once more, DG, give our thanks to the minister. We wish him well, and the president. They are in Mozambique. Mozambique is the biggest trading partner with South Africa in SADC. It's quite an important and strategic economy. The port there in Mozambique is important for both our minerals and their minerals, including Zimbabwe and other countries in SADC, to exit our shores to go overseas. So it's an important visit that is being undertaken. I'm sure they will also engage on the recent elections outcomes and how the country is stabilizing after those particular elections. Honorable members, this is how we come to the close of today's meeting, and we will meet again next week, which might be our last meeting, all things being equal. Thank you very much and enjoy your afternoon. Hambane kahle tsamayani sentle ngumailo takenza.
Thank you, Mr. J. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Bye.